Hello, everyone. My name is Yusuf Jamdoom, and I'm the CEO of Julip. And we're here today with Mr. Adam Docrat, and we will be discussing the ERP and the pharma industry, or more specifically, the pharmacies. Adam is one of the experienced individuals in the areas of pharma and software. And given our positioning in serving that sector, we'll be having conversations around why the industry requires a specialized software, what are some of the challenges, and also a side note, Adam is a comedian. So hopefully it will be an enjoyable conversation for the listeners. Right. So Adam, if you start and give us a quick introduction to the audience.
Sure. So thank you so much for having me on the podcast. Like I said, my name's Adam Docrat. I'm currently the head of IT for Chemist Warehouse UAE. Chemist Warehouse being the largest Australian pharmacy group with over 550 stores in Australia, 52 stores in New Zealand, and then stores in both Ireland and China. And we're busy launching here in the UAE, hopefully within the next couple of weeks. So everyone getting geared up for that. I've been in the region now for the last 11 years, both in Qatar as well as here in the UAE, and worked for the other two largest pharmacy groups in the UAE, Asta Pharmacy and Life Pharmacy, both of which today have a combined store count of around 600 or 700 pharmacies. But working in ERPs as well for the last 15, 20 years, both from a migration as well as a support and implementation. And excited to be on this podcast to discuss the challenges with you here
Thank
today.
you for joining us. So we'll start to give some paint to the audience, talking about what makes the pharma industry different than other industries.
Sure. I think everyone who ever joins a pharmacy group, and it was the same for me when I first joined pharmacy, I saw a pharmacy from an outside and I thought, it's just retail. It's so easy, it's just the same thing. You buy and you sell. And then you get stuck into it and you realize it's completely different. Obviously there's a huge retail element to it. We're still buying and selling ultimately. But I think the pharmacy industry is really unique. You not only have the medicines, you have to really track customers, patients, products in a very different way, which is very different to your traditional retailing experience. I think specifically around pharma, there's a huge human element to pharmacy, similar to a hospital, right? You've got patients who are coming in to see you, most of them who have a need to come in. I don't think anyone nowadays just shops at the pharmacy for the fun of shopping at a pharmacy. We're trying to change that. We're trying to make pharmacy more accessible. But I think people are generally coming in to see you for a concern, and you've got to address that in a very specific way. You've got to have the right products on the shelf to cater for their unique and different demands. You've got to have the right customer experience. You have to have the right systems in place. And overall, the experience has to be one of welcoming. It has to be one of professionalism because you want to give the right message across to the people. And then from a system perspective, the systems need to be agile and stable enough to cater for the demands of all kinds of patients here in the region.
Well said. It is a complex operations that touches both retail and healthcare. As an IT lead, when you think of choosing a system, what comes to mind, or what are the key areas that you would evaluate when thinking about a system to make sure you cover the operational needs as well as what makes the pharmacy different?
So I think you actually just said the right word, operational. Actually, IT, if you take a traditional organization, they'll look at IT and they'll look at things like security and they'll look at things like infra and they'll look at, the ways in which the system connects with everything else. And obviously those are very important. But where pharmacy is different is the operational side of the business. You've got to choose and when we look at a product, we look at a product to help serve our customers and serve our backline and frontline staff. And we've got to choose systems which take the pharmacy operations in mind. It's pointless having a system which doesn't serve the needs of both the customer as well as the back office staff. And specifically around traditional pharmacies. If you take a traditional pharmacy, unlike Carrefour, for example, as a retailer, or Emax, a Sharaf DG, any of the larger retailers, even the smaller retailers, what you typically do on a system is you go on, you scan a product, and you sell it to a customer. And that's the end of the journey, and that's what the system has to do. Pharmacy is a lot more complex. There's medicines, there's interactions, there's prescriptions, there's insurance, there's all these things. But we're aiming to look to find a system which makes all of that as seamless and easy as possible. Why? Because you want the pharmacist to spend more time interacting with the customer. You want the pharmacist to spend more time dealing with problems, finding out solutions to those customers, as opposed to sitting and trying to work on a PC.
Yeah. I'll ask a little bit tough question.
Sure.
There is a hypothetical scenario where there's a group of more than hundreds of stores, and you are tasked of taking and changing the system to, let's say, be able to keep up with the operational needs and aspiration of the group. What are the timeline and costs that you would think about?
Well, I think most businesses will tell you the timeline is yesterday and the cost is zero. So I think that's what you get. No, yeah. But I think, so from a timeline perspective and a cost perspective, there's two ways to look at it. You can either build a brand new system, spend 9 months, 12 months, 2 years, building in the best system. And sometimes that's needed. Sometimes the systems that are there are so old and antiquated that they need a complete revamp. But what I try and look at is like I said earlier, how can I make life easier for everyone? And what we do is we break down all the operational cycles into micro buckets. Break it down to micro buckets and find out ways in which we can automate and enhance each individual experience. Now, let me give you an example. Take something as simple as a purchase order. Everyone raises a purchase order. Even if the system is clever enough to suggest a purchase order quantity, it might give you some ideas, the guy might manipulate it. You still have the purchase order and you still have to send it to a supplier. What we were faced with recently was, and this is in a very small example, but let's take your 100 example. In the UAE, we probably have about 50 suppliers. Out of those, you'll send 4 orders a month. So that's already 200 purchase orders per pharmacy, multiplied by 100. That's already, well over 20,000 purchase orders a month. Now, the act of downloading that purchase order, attaching it to an email and sending it to a supplier, maybe will take someone 45 seconds to a minute to do that. So not only do you have the manual process involved, not only do you have the risk of someone forgetting to do it and they might do the order in the system but they might not send it to the supplier, but you've got 20,000 minutes of wasted time that could be used elsewhere. And doing something as simple as just, when you set up the vendor, put the email in, when we confirm the purchase order, automatically shoot the email down to the supplier, automatically put a copy in the inbox of the pharmacist so he knows automatically that the email's gone. If there's any replies, he's going to get them immediately. That's, I think, where the big wins are, is finding those little wins and taking all of those little micro 1 minute, 2 minute jobs, automating everything, and then making life a lot easier for the teams involved.
Sure. So making people life easier is the major objective of a system change. So if you were asked, how long would that take for you to kind of understand all the requirements, the processes, design and talk to vendors and get the prices and start implementing? Realistic timeline.
Sure. Look, I think I'm lucky that I've been in a position where I've interacted with everyone. So I know the vendors, I know everyone. We recently did our full end-to-end ERP implementation at Chemist Warehouse. It took us 5 months end-to-end. Right? Okay. We probably could have been quicker if we really pushed, but we had other stuff going on and we weren't opening in time, so it wasn't really a push. But a realistic timeline for an organization with about 100 stores, the whole identification build of a system should take no longer than 6 months. Obviously, you've got to then consider things like change management, which is hugely important. And that is something that's overlooked by most IT guys, because it's one thing to put a great system in, but if people don't know how to use it, if people are not trained, if they're not empowered, if they're not on board with the program, then immediately the system will fail.
That's exactly I was going to that, which is like the what causes usually failure within implementation.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you've got to spend the time to do that. You've got to spend the time to train everyone. You've got to spend the time to get everyone on board, get everyone's feedback. We sent out survey after survey saying, what would you like to see in the new system? 50% of the stuff that they sent us, we already knew, right? 40% of the stuff in the system that they requested, we were never going to be able to do. People said things like, I'd love facial recognition. And it's great. Facial recognition to log into a PC would be amazing. But the costs obviously, outweigh the sort of benefits. And then you have 10%, and that 10% is stuff that we didn't even know about. They were challenges that guys were actually facing on the shop floor that I didn't know about, that their managers in the head office didn't know about, but it was real challenges the guys in the store were facing. And when we presented back to them that 60% of things we're going to do for them, they were like, great, this is going to make our lives so much easier. And you'd be surprised with the things that actually people found easier. One of the things we did recently was, all we did is we historically had two systems. We had a back office system and we had a point of sale system. And what we thought is, let's bring the back office into the point of sale. And what it did, it was like, oh, now I can do everything on the front, right? I can do everything in one system. Now, the management team were like, well, you're spending $400,000 more on bringing to the front system. What are you gaining from it? And I was like, well, hang on. Firstly, you're making everyone's lives easier. You're making less people go into the back to use a back system. But also, I don't have to buy licenses now for that back office system. Yeah. So I'm now bringing everything into a single license. So I've now saved 200, 300 licenses that we didn't have to purchase previously. So it's about looking for those financial wins that help the business. It's about looking for those, optimization wins that help serve the customer better. And it's about just generally making life easier for the guys on the ground.
Yeah. Great. And what's your general view on generic software versus specialized software?
Generic software has its place. I wouldn't say that there's great tools out there. I've used Odoo before. I think everyone's used Odoo. It's great. It's the first app is free, but it doesn't always meet the needs of something as complex as pharmacies or any business for that matter. I think every business is different. Every business runs their business differently. We can all harp on about saying that everyone should do best practice and everyone should, adopt the way the system is running, but that's practically not possible, right? You have things which happen in a pharmacy that don't happen anywhere else. Again, another example is something that we've done now where we've made a customization change, because what would traditionally happen is you'd go to the point of sale with your prescription. The guy at the point of sale would do everything at the point of sale, get your approval, get your medicines, hand it over to you, you'd pay, and then you'd leave. But our business is different. So our first store actually is 10,000 square foot. So it's an enormous pharmacy. And what we've done, we've split up the point of sales with the dispensing or the insurance or the prescription area. And we've sent customers to the back. So the customers get to go to the back. They get to have dedicated FaceTime with guys who are just there to serve them on their prescriptions, not worried about the queue that's sitting behind them. They get to sit down, they get to relax, they get to wait for their insurance approvals to happen. But when they finish, we get to hand over the medicine to them and we direct them to the front of the store to pay. Now, yes, I could follow the traditional one and say, no, you can just pay at the back, but I want people to go to the front. Selfishly, because I want people to walk through my store, see the different products, pick up one or two other products that they may not have realized I had in my store, and then complete their healthcare experience.
So full store experience
Yeah.
in thinking of not only the software component, but how you give a best outcome for the business as well.
100%.
So one part of the question you mentioned from a timeline, and the other was a cost. So if you were to estimate the cost budget for 100 plus stores or around 100 stores, would you have a ballpark figure or
Sure.
an estimate?
I would. I mean, and this is going on what I've done previously. And if we're talking US dollars, for a 100 plus store, considering a 9-month sort of implementation with a 6-month implementation, a 3-month sort of change management and training, you'd probably be looking at between $1 to $2 million for the implementation, excluding the licenses. And I think that's a pretty fair assumption on the costs. And then from a license cost model as well, I think, if you're looking at the larger retailers, your Oracles, your SAPs, your Microsofts, and so on, you're looking at probably close to about $180 per user per year or per store per year just for sort of the store, and then an additional $50 to $100 for each of the point of sale machines. And then there's your back office teams, and you just add. And it obviously depends on how big the pharmacies are and how many point of sales. But you can all end up in an easy $5 to $7 million implementation quite easily.
All right, we'll take a quick twist into the comedy side. So can you tell us about your comedy side and how did you get into it?
Sure. It's an interesting story. I've been doing a lot of public speaking, and I started probably about 3-4 years ago doing a lot of public speaking at events like Seamless, like GITEX, and all of these events. And doing anything for the first time, you get nervous. You get, you're not sure what to do. I would over prepare, and I would be sitting very uncomfortable, trying to, memorize what I was going to say, and not being able to improvise, just being essentially reading from a script that I was given. And I sort of had a look, and I said, no, I need to go do public speaking. Let's have a look at Toastmasters. Let's have a look at all of these cool public speaking courses. And I had a look, and it just happened on my Instagram. I got a recommendation for a comedy course by a company in Dubai called Comedy Kicks, and it's a famous Filipina comedian called Ima Dumagai. And she was advertising a course, and I thought, wow, that sounds really hard. Imagine standing in front of a stage and telling jokes and having that immediate reaction, because, we all go to conferences, everyone sits quietly, everyone's writing notes. You don't know whether someone is engaged with your content or not engaged with your content. But stand-up comedies, you know, when the room goes silent, you really know. So I thought, that's really hard. But if I can be good at that, then the public speaking is easy. And I think that's what happened. Yeah. And I don't claim to be a stand-up comedian. I'm not, at the likes of a Bill Burr or Russell Peters or any of the Jimmy Carrs or any of the big stand-up comedians. But I like to think I do.
So your advice for people who are doing ERP implementation, when they have a break, go take a comedy comedy course. No, that's definitely good advice, because, as you said, it's like a different way to go into the public, and you go for the hard part, so the public speaking becomes much easier. Yeah. So I think that's a great way and experience to share. So we'll go back into the international aspect. You mentioned, we talked about generic versus specialized software. So how would you think about from market to market? So given your exposure, you have worked with pharmacies in different countries, and you have the pharmacy complexity, but then you have also the element of different markets. So how do you think about that from an IT perspective?
I think you have to look at, I think there's two sides to that. One is, look at the right software for the right requirements. If you take some of the largest retailers here, they have a different software for the point of sale and a different software for their back office finance operations. And that works because you get to have specialized software for finance and back office, and it might be in synergy with the rest of a larger group, but then still having dedicated software to handle your point of sale. There's also other add-ons as well. So, we're using one of the Microsoft products as an end-to-end solution in one country, but in another country, we're using just the Microsoft product for the point of sale, and we're using a dedicated software specifically for pharmacy, for just the pharmacy products. And I think market to market, it's really about understanding, what you need in that market. And I think the biggest thing which a lot of people forget about is a lot of people just sit there and okay, we need to put in a bit of software, let's find the best software. As opposed to saying, well, hang on, there's a whole bunch of other pharmacies out there who are already doing it. Let's see what everyone else is using, right? Why should we have to reinvent a wheel? Why should I have to redevelop something from scratch? Why not use something that is already in the market, is already tested, everyone is already using it, copy the same, right? Make the tweaks that you need to make the adjustments to suit your business. But use something which is already there, already tried and tested. I guarantee that most of the listeners here all have email. And I don't know if anyone is as old as me, maybe not. But Lotus Notes is a great email tool. It's one of the best email tools that is there, but it requires a lot of work to get set up. It requires a team. It requires, database and servers. Why do I need the hassle of that? Just put in Office 365. I can have it up and running in literally 3-4 hours, and I've got email for everyone. Everyone is using it. Everyone is using Teams. Everyone is using, all of the additional Copilot features and SharePoint. Leverage off what everyone else is using. Have the ability to talk to other people in the market who also using the same software as you. Share your feedback. Share code. Share problems that you're having that, that they also might be having, and find common solutions for it. So I think, really looking at, cheating essentially and finding out what everyone else is doing.
I think that's kind of finding shortcuts in kind of decreasing the risk. So just a question when it comes to your experience with Julip. So in one of your implementations, it was with Julip. So if you can share what was your experience like, and let's say kind of things you liked that did a good impact.
Sure, Julip was horrible. I'll never implement it again. No, Julip was great, and I tell you why. And I think goes back to my cheating thing. Julip, when we looked at software, we were like, okay, let's put in first. The first thing is let's do the same software we've done everywhere else, right? And we had a look, and we had a look at the costs, and we had a look at the requirements for servers and implementations, and then we went back and we said, well, hang on, what else is out there? So we looked at, so we were going into Saudi, we had a look at Nahdi, we had a look at Dawa, and we saw obviously they got big Oracle implementations. We thought, no, we're not going to do a big Oracle implementation. Then we had a look, and they were like, well, they've done Julep. And I said, well, let's have a look at what Julep's done. And we met yourself, and we met the team. And what we liked about it is that everything was there, right? We didn't have to do anything. We didn't have to develop anything. We had to change some business processes, fine. We had to make some customization changes, fine. But the core of the solution was already there and already readily available. They had the batch tracking, they had the integrations with the doctors, they had the integrations for, all of the medical and government requirements. The HR module and the finance module was already set up in a way to cater to the Saudi market. We didn't have to go and reinvent a wheel. And I think that's what we really liked about going with Julep. From a timeline perspective, I think we went live in like 8 weeks.
So that's breaking records.
It was a really quick implementation. Big, but again, and I think a lot of it boiled down to, when I say we went live, actually we went live technically on like day one, right? The rest of the time was just loading up our item master, creating users, creating our stores. We weren't actually developing anything. Everything was there. We just had to fill in the forms. We had to fill in the forms. We had to upload our items. We had to set our replenishment cycles. We had to set up the receiving. I think the only the integration that we did was with our third-party warehouse, which took 3-4 weeks to get that integration done. But aside from that, everything else was there. And like I was talking about Microsoft Office 365, it's there. You just have to configure it. So it made life for us a lot easier.
From a Julip perspective, it's a specialized software, and they're looking to make the life easier for the software user, from implementation to the continuous updates that the pharmacy market is moving and the pharma market overall. Given the global hat that you wear, do you see an opportunity for global opportunities where Julep can serve not only one market, multiple markets, and kind of help you, because you have the pharma side that it's already covered, but you have the market tweaks. So do you see that option?
Yeah, I definitely think so. And I think where we could talk about the market tweaks, mostly in countries where insurance is a heavy presence and you require integrations with the government. But once you've done it once for one customer, then it's essentially open. Everyone has to do the same integration. So I think it's definitely open and available. And we just saw features that were available on Julep that just are not there in a standard ERP or point of sale solution. And one of the coolest features, which I love about it, and I wish I could implement in Microsoft Dynamics, but it will never ever work, is the ability to serve a customer, and that customer say, okay, wait, I'm going to go check something else, and just click a little button, and you go to page number 2, and then you can serve another customer and go back to page number 1. That just doesn't exist. You have to hold the transaction, then you have to go and recall the transaction, find it from this giant list of transactions, and bring that back up on the screen. It's such a cumbersome effort with other ERPs. Julep, there's a little tabs like Microsoft Internet Explorer tabs. You just click on whichever tab. Oh, there's a customer, and then you just carry on transacting with that customer. And that made such a difference, I think, to our customers, because it also allowed you the ability to serve a customer after you'd done the transaction. Really upsell to that customer and say, hey, do you want anything else? Oh yes, I'd really like I bought I'm diabetic, or I've taken antibiotics. Now I need to have a look for a probiotic. And it gives the flexibility. If you're a small pharmacy, maybe you've got one point of sale, someone can take that patient and walk away and find him the right product, and another cashier can come in and serve other customers. So you're not holding up the point of sale, you're not blocking it for other transactions. And I think that's where the specialized comes in, because that doesn't exist in a supermarket, that doesn't exist in a fashion clothing brand. It exists only really in something like a pharmacy.
Correct. Yeah, that's a great example. And we have tons of small little things that we really help the pharmacy and the pharmacist and the back end office to have everything simplified and easy to go. I really want to thank you for your time, Adam. We look forward for continued collaboration, and we have big vision to expand outside Saudi, and we're stepping into the UAE, and we have other markets that we are active in, and we look forward to really serve the pharma sector in an unparalleled way as a specialized software. Thank you.
Okay, all the best. Thank you so much.